Hi, my name is Ryan, and I'm a second-year BSN student in the School of Nursing.
Hi, my name is Audrey. I am also a second year nursing student. Our project was conducted alongside Associate Professor Amy Walker and aims to understand and describe self-reported childhood trauma in undergraduate nursing students. The trauma and stress of the COVID pandemic and the racial reckoning has brought a spotlight on the need to understand the effects of trauma on learning. Trauma affects learning both in how students process information and how they utilize that information. Practices and policies in nursing education can be supportive or re-traumatizing. The purpose of our study is to describe the frequency and types of trauma experienced by UW undergraduate nursing students with a focus on childhood trauma. Students were recruited through email UW server groups and social media platforms. Participants completed the Childhood Trauma Questionnaire from Penn-Baker 2013 to report their childhood experiences of trauma via an anonymous online survey on RedCap. Here we are comparing the demographics of the School of Nursing undergraduates to the participants in our study. You can see that we have a 93% response rate. There is a slight discrepancy in numbers as our survey allowed respondents to select multiple races instead of a single option. The representation of our study group was very comparable to that of the SON, with nearly half of study participants being between the ages of 18 and 24, over 3/4 female, and over 1/3 being a first-generation college student.
Our study assessed trauma in 6 categories, which is shown on the x-axis, such as traumatic sexual and violent experiences. On the y-axis, this graph shows what percentage of SON participants reported experiencing each trauma before the age of 17. It was shocking to acknowledge the depth of our group's trauma, with nearly half of participants experiencing a close personal death and more than a quarter of participants reporting traumatic sexual encounters such as rape, sexual assault, or molestation as early as age 3. On this graph, we compiled the sum of each participant's trauma experiences and the frequency of those sums into this pie chart. We separated these groups based off of the number of traumas, such as 34% of SON students having one childhood trauma. It also shows that 80% of the population experienced at least one trauma as a child and that 25% had 3 or more. A related study about adverse childhood experiences found that childhood trauma decreases mental, physical, and social health. This includes increased rates of STIs, maternal and child health problems, diabetes, and suicide rates. Our study shows that UW nursing undergraduates have an immense amount of trauma, and we're really just scratching the surface of it.
This is an example of a trauma that is relevant to our student body. Our survey gave participants the opportunity to answer optional open-ended questions to elaborate on their traumatic experiences. The scope of the trauma we discovered in our survey was too large and diverse to fit into a simple 5-minute lightning talk. Here are several examples of reoccurring themes brought up in our qualitative data we obtained. 76% of participants answered the optional open-ended questions, indicating that students want to talk about trauma. We realized that Childhood Trauma Questionnaire did not address the full spectrum of trauma experiences.
Finally, our major findings. The first is that most UW nursing undergraduates have experienced a major childhood trauma and that 25% have experienced more than 3. The second is that there's a potentially larger amount of trauma that hasn't been talked about, including aspects of disability, discrimination, and gender identity. The third is that there's a willingness to participate in trauma discussion as evidenced by our 93% response rate and 76% of participants engaging the optional qualitative questions. The fourth is that trauma expressed by participants was notably unresolved. Another aspect of our study involved asking participants how much they confided in others about their trauma. When we averaged those out for each trauma type, it was shocking to find out that the vast majority of participants who had severe trauma did not confide in others. This leads us to believe that UW undergraduate nursing students have a notable amount of unresolved trauma and that there needs to be major changes to accommodate those experiences. Those accommodations begin with acknowledging the trauma within ourselves. This means seeking help, talking to others, and connecting with available resources. It's also important to acknowledge the trauma within our peers. There's a world of experiences that we all hide, and we need to be cognizant of that, focusing on understanding and empathy of others. Finally, campaigning for trauma-informed learning environments is especially important. How can we expect to practice trauma-informed nursing for our patients when we're not given a trauma-informed education? Ultimately, there's a diverse and massive collection of trauma in UW's undergraduate nursing students. Change needs to be made on an individual and structural level to support students, and that all begins with trauma-informed education and further research.